So, Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying.
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
So,
and I'm against censorship. I'm in favor of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And freedom of speech only is relevant when people you don't like say things you don't like. Otherwise, it has no meaning.
But I do think that there should be guardrails. But these have been up there for a while.
Are they illegal?
They're not illegal, but they're hateful, and they can lead to violence.
So you want censorship and I don't?
No, I don't want censorship at all.
Yes, you do.
No, I want responsibility. I think there.
You desperately want censorship?
No, if I want a censorship.
You want censorship so bad you can taste it?
No, that's not true. It's not true. I think that there's right and wrong. They're hateful. I want responsibility. Moderation. There should be guardrails.
These are just different words for exactly the same act of censorship. It doesn't matter what it's called. Changing the labels doesn't make the act any different. Any interference with freedom of speech is censorship, no matter what one calls it. Lemon is doing the typical snake thing of constructing a maze of abstract theories around simple truths to distract from their obvious nature. Those under the influence of deceivers might object that free speech is a complex issue that can't be defined so simply and so on. No, it is not complex, not complicated, no experts are needed. It is very simple. Freedom of speech is the ability to say what others don't want to hear without it being suppressed in any way, that's all. Those who try to portray it as anything other than this very simple concept are manipulative deceivers who utilize complexity, relativism, and expertism as tools of manipulative intent. Deceivers always try to create the impression that something very simple is actually highly complex and then use convoluted and completely nonsensical ideas to confuse those they are trying to deceive.
They're hateful. I want responsibility. Moderation. There should be guardrails.
Self-proclaimed experts, who are deceivers in sheep's clothing or NPCs programmed by deceivers, invoke the concepts of complexity and relativity to construct a maze of abstract relativizations around definitive objective definitions. They create the illusion of a legitimate discussion while there is nothing to discuss, as the existing definition is ultimately completely sufficient, as it is objective and needs no subjective additions. Let's change the subject to examine the nature of this conversation from a different, more practical perspective. Oranges are seemingly more practical subjects than the seemingly abstract concept of free speech, but free speech only seems abstract because the deceivers have successfully dragged it into the realm of the abstract with all their supposedly legitimate discussions. It's actually a very practical thing if you think of the impact on free speech simply as if someone were stuffing a gag in your mouth. A gag is a gag, no matter what color, no matter how big, no matter what material, no matter where it was made, and by whom and why and when. A gag in your mouth is a gag in your mouth. Whether a physical gag or a digital gag, a gag is a gag. And if big tech interferes with your digital freedom of speech, that's exactly the same as someone walking up to you, holding you down, and stuffing a gag in your mouth. If the clothes and surroundings were changed, but the exact same conversation about free speech was had, you would immediately get a highly objective and deeply revealing insight into the true nature of the situation. Now suddenly everything makes sense. Now it is suddenly abundantly clear that Lemon is a severely mentally ill individual in need of intensive psychotherapy and antipsychotic medication, respectively, and interdimensional deportation back to his dimension of origin. The obvious truth of his insanity is hidden behind a facade, behind distractions, expectations, and habituation. At CNN, Lemon sits in a professional studio. He wears a suit. He has a title, news anchor. He has his own show. He is a recognizable figure. He has journalism awards. It's all a facade. A distraction, a mask, and a disguise, hiding the truth that he is completely insane. Lemon's mental illness is not obvious to most, or they recognize it to some degree, but don't go as far as they should in their assessment and don't draw definitive conclusions. They remain on the surface, undecided, unwilling to commit themselves definitively. People are conditioned to be tolerant, accepting, and lenient, to recognize everyone's convictions, no matter how twisted and deranged, as legitimate opinions that are equal to everyone else's opinion. They are programmed to accept the subjective, the arbitrary, the chaotic as objective reality. They may think or say, sure, Don Lemon is a crazy guy, but come on, he's not really insane, is he? That sounds a little extreme. It's not extreme, it's objective, but since the reality recognized and described is extreme, so is the objective evaluation of it. If the reality is extreme, the description of the reality is inevitably also extreme. And that reality is that Don Lemon is a severely mentally ill, clinically insane person who operates not only outside of a mental asylum, but in a position of influence in one of the largest media networks in the world. Therapy and medication for Lemon only as an example, because practically this would most likely be futile as clinical criminal psychopaths like Lemon are considered incurable by modern psychiatry. They do not respond to therapy. It must also be understood that Lemon is no ordinary clinical psychopath. His mental state is as distant from psychopathy as psychopathy is from sociopathy. He is an ultra-psychopath, a satanic psychopath, which in secular terms can be described as the highest degree of sadistic criminal psychopath. Those of this caliber deliberately construct lies that start wars in which millions die. It must be ensured that Lemon can no longer harm anyone. He has already done enormous damage with his psychopathic lies and deceptions in a position where he has influence over public opinion. This must be outlawed. Criminal psychopaths must not be allowed to poison public opinion. Neither should they be allowed to censor the speech of the sane who expose the insane. Those like Lemon must be required by law to wear straitjackets during the broadcasts. They can speak freely, but they must not be allowed to masquerade as one of the sane in order to deceive the naive. Or videos like this must no longer be censored by the clinically insane to inform the public about the state of mind of Don Lemon and everyone else at CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the New York Times, etc. It is their speech that is causing harm in the real world. And in typical satanic behavior, they are projecting this onto others. Don Lemon is both completely insane and a calculating psychopathic pathological liar. A good liar must know the truth in order to avoid it. Those like Lemon know the truth, but their satanic insanity makes them perceive it as a lie, because for them the Luciferian doctrine is the only truth. Their perception of reality is upside down. It is satanic. They then use their intellect to present the lie as truth.
And I believe in free speech as much as you. I would
Very
fight. I don't disagree. I don't agree with a lot of what you put out on social media, but I will fight for your right to be able to say it.
He uses the phrase, I don't agree with what you say, but I will fight for your right to say it, only because it makes him appear to be a defender of free speech, when in reality he is exactly the opposite. Everything he says is aimed at restricting free speech more and more in order to eventually end and destroy it. He turns the facts into the exact opposite, typical satanic inversion.
As I just read to you, the shooters, in all of these mass shootings, attributed social media to radicalizing.
The fake manifestos that are part of the script of their staged shootings blame social media for radicalization, which then gives them the excuse to censor social media because memes cause harm in the real world. They are the creators of their own needed rationalizations, typical satanic deception.
But if you are doing something that promotes hate and violence and ultimately leads to killing, you don't feel you have any responsibility not to do that?
There is no meme on this planet that is more hateful and has a greater potential to lead to violence, killings, and mass murder than the satanic manipulations of Alexa Don Lemon. He projects it, as Satanists do, onto others. No, it's not us who are hateful and dangerous, Lemon says, but those who create memes that expose our dangerous rhetoric and the consequences they cause, typical satanic projection.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not...
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying.
Some people would call removing child pornography censorship, namely people like him, Satanists who rely on pedophilia for their livelihood. Regardless of whether they are involved in it themselves, most of them are. They all support it. They all depend on it. Pedophilia is what keeps the satanic pyramid machine running. Understandably, that's why he's worried about censorship. They do indeed want pedophilia to become part of public culture. They do everything they can to normalize it. Typical satanic normalization. Typical satanic inversion. Typical satanic deceit. Typical satanic projection. Typical satanic normalization. Don Lemon is a pure Satanist. Don Lemon is a mentally ill, psychopathic Satanist. He isn't civil, sane, or reasonable or honest. He isn't a professional journalist. He isn't a black man. He isn't a human. These are all masks that the creature uses for camouflage and manipulation. The Snake Basket CNN is a demonic bridgehead from the hell realm where snakes like Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, Aaron Burnett, Jake Tapper, Caitlin Collins, and all the others are pouring in. They are beyond reason and redemption. They are incurable. These devils must be exorcised, and their interdimensional breach must be sealed. The means to this end is the truth. The truth will destroy them, just as their lies seek to destroy us.